MakingStarWars.net.
Hey everybody, my name is Jason Ward from MakingStarWars.net, and I'm joined by Ghost Rob at the Orange Julius.
Hey everybody, I'm totally feeling pretty good.
Yeah, baby.
almost getting your Wolfman wards, Wolfman Jacks, right? Your Wolfman.
I'm about to challenge Weird Al to a song off. And he's gonna come up with another one bites the dust, another one bites the bus. So
American fandom. Yes.
Have you watched the Weird Al movie yet?
No.
Damn. It's I've watched it like 4 times now. I just put it on. It's like that movie for me right now. I just put it on. I love it. It's so dumb and so good at the same time. We have like a pretty, I guess, cool announcement maybe. I found the will and the motivation to strip this show of audio, the YouTube show, the live show, and put it on all the podcast networks. So I put it on Spotify first, which is where we're hosting it. And then it's on Apple and, Stitcher and all of that jazz too. So if you can't make the live shows and you want to just, listen to the show at work and you can't have video of our stupid faces up, or your boss is going to know that you're really just staring off into oblivion, thinking about sweet, sweet freedom, you could do that now if you want to. And
it's gonna make make the cartoon voices a little more fun, right?
Oh yeah. No, I was thinking about this. We're gonna have to be more descriptive. I'm gonna have to be like, 2 young men, too attractive for their time. They both walk alone, then they meet together, and they know that there's a war in the stars. But do they know that their paths were about to finally cross with destiny? So it'll be like that.
Spreezy, right?
Yeah.
Spreezy.
And then he's like, "Hey, mate, yeah. I got some Hungry Jacks for you." And I'm like, "All right, cool, man." Do
you know about this Snyder? He knows his stuff.
Yeah. So
why don't you know your stuff?
So
I don't know.
I was gonna actually. This is stuff I should talk to you about before the show, but it was kind of But I was gonna say, do you think I should upload all of the Andor reviews that you and I did to the podcast thing? Because the other 2, the last 2 will just show up. So I was thinking maybe I'm gonna So if you're gonna subscribe, there might be a bunch of episodes dropping all at once. I'll make sure to not do that anymore, but I'll just do that for the Andor reviews. That way, if people are behind or they're new to the podcast, that way at least all of that's there.
And, might want them in order.
Yeah.
So you're not jumping between 7 and 4 and 1 and 2.
That's what I was thinking.
I prefer the chaos, but I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I mean, I like the chaos too as well. Yeah, and it was a rural farm boy who was asking me a lot, "Hey, you gonna do that podcast? You put that podcast back up? You gonna do that?" And
that's a word I can't say. Do you know that, Jason?
What podcast?
Rural.
I could say it, but right now I really can't say it. It's hard to say rural.
I was watching a video before we're gonna get on the Star Wars stuff in 1 second, but I was watching a video last week. It was French people trying to pronunciate basic English words that just don't work with their phonetics, Oh, and right. I'm like, am I French? Because I can't say rural.
Yeah.
Rurapente. That's it. That's how it always ends up. Rurapente. There.
Well, I mean, you got any of those Grogu dust bunnies under your pits? You might be French. So
we're gonna talk about that now.
Yeah, we can talk about that. Really, I mean, there's not really a lot to say, I don't think, but it was. It was. I mean, I'm of 2 minds here. The first is, I don't know why they put the tweets out that teased something that they knew was going to make anticipation bigger than what they were going to deliver on, but then they waited till the last minute, which was a better way to do it. It didn't have too long to brew and get out of control, but they also didn't go out and formally announce it until the very last minute. So it's it's both stupid and not as stupid as it could have been. And what's that word I could never remember that Luthen is in Nandor? Like that wants to start the fires, the little
accelerationism.
Yeah. Is Kathleen Kennedy being a Studio Ghibli accelerationist? Is she trying to start the fire to get like up another production like moving and paid for?
Right.
And I don't know if you saw yesterday, there was like a big announcement at Disney that there's going to be a hiring freeze and layoffs coming, and not fun stuff for the employees, unfortunately, which sucks.
We'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
We're jumping.
Yeah.
I'm staying on the Ghibli thing. Like the thing I said when we were talking about this announcement was, I was like, hey, you may want to temper your expectations, just because, by all means, just having watched Miyazaki's like, almost unedited, right? There's always some form of editing in a documentary, right?
Mm-hmm.
But pretty candid response to all the students running out to watch The Force Awakens while he's alone animating his caterpillar. Got a sense he was 40, almost 40 when Star Wars 77 came out. He didn't really care. So I was like, all right, temper your expectations.
Right.
But this almost could have just been like a commercial for Disney. I don't know. Like it's beyond tempering, and into the point where, like, if you say Studio Ghibli Star Wars, even if it's only 30 seconds, you have what they like to call in writing, Jason, the promise of the premise, right? What's the promise? Studio Ghibli, right? Mm-hmm. Or the premise is Studio Ghibli Star Wars. Think about all the things you think in your head, just visually, right? And even if it's just like a little thing, an ink brush thing with some dust buddies, with some very creative music by Ludwig. The music was pretty good. But
I wanted to hit on that.
It's just so like, it's a non-plus. It's like, all right, this looks like, again, the other thing I said was, it could just be the whole opening a pathway to doing something later, like feeling each other out.
Yeah.
And like, who here wants to work on this? I can see Miyazaki, right? Who here wants to do this? I want to do it. Fucking Star Wars, right? And so then they do it. All right. But like, we got stuff to do, so like, keep this. I don't want you eating up the ink and paint department too much, and don't ink this too. Like just get it done. And there you go. So it's super creative. It's super creative.
I mean, I'm not mad that it exists. I just feel like it should have, like, the announcement should have said a 3-minute short from Studio Ghibli and Lucasfilm is coming, and we would just been like, cool, okay. Instead, we're like, oh, is this going to be 20 minutes like one of the episodes of Visions? Is this a film? Like, because they could do a film. Like it's completely, possible. And
also, if you're gonna do a minimalist bit featuring Baby Yoda, you gotta put some green in there somewhere. There's just, I don't understand some of the, like, the green significance expected. Of a pink flag. Like, fuck, if he had the green, if the flower was green and then he hugged it and he turned green, then there'd be a little twist there. You see what I mean? So
yeah,
even I'm all for liquid television, like not crazy, but just like I like Fantasia, like abstract animation. I love Fantasia, right?
Yeah.
And even the sequel, not as good, although the Firebird Suite is probably the greatest piece of animation ever made in America. Like,
what if we had some of that Eon Flux with Yoda's tongue sticking out, like a fly crawling on his eye?
Well, could you imagine? Well, here's the thing: where his tongue goes out, he eats a frog, and then you follow the frog down Grogu's gullet as you become assimilated and back into the Force. Like, there's all sorts of abstract things you can do.
Yeah.
So, like, this is more like a commercial, like, in a way, right? Like, this would be like a cool little, you could do little 15-second snippets of this Disney Plus kind of thing, or
right.
So it's fine, but it's just like, had they not put the picture of like Miyazaki blurred out behind the Baby Yoda toy, I'd probably be just like, hey man, this is like a pathway. But putting Miyazaki at that, then you're like insinuating a certain thing. Does that make sense?
I looked under the credits. He's not in the credits, I don't think. I didn't see him.
And I knew he wouldn't do anything with this.
I figured. I figured. Yeah. I'm no expert, but from what we've talked about over the last year about him, and as he's come up, I figured that he wouldn't be involved, really. So it's cute though. It's really adorable.
We had some feedback in the we'll wrap this up, but we had some feedback in the YouTube where people were like, hey man, I want to see more Studio Ghibli before this came out, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm certain Kathleen Kennedy wants a whole 18 episode series, like, no doubt. It's not really the case. Like, what they're capable of doing, all hands on what I mean, the dude's pushing 90. I'm sure he wants to get his Boro movie out, in the next year or two. So
Yeah.
I don't know, like I do hope though that this does signify that they're building a more independent creative structure at Ghibli, right? In that it doesn't just die when Miyazaki dies. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, they are going to have to listen to. I mean, any company, whether it's Lucasfilm and with George Lucas or Ghibli with Miyazaki, they're going to have to follow their own passions and desires and not just live in the shadow of what would Daddy have liked. I mean, at some point, you're just guessing, and it would be
but
hell.
But to be a little critical, they did do a commercial. I want to say like a couple years ago with this ink brush technique with some cats.
Mhm.
Almost the same thing, but made a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
So like it almost feels like, all right, you did sort of plug and play something you kind of already did. It wasn't like they developed like someone's messing around with the ink brush. Oh, look at that! Like because it really wasn't even a full Sumi like brushwork Yoda where like maybe it's splatting, you know what I mean, and like different dust bunnies are coming out of the splats and stuff.
Question:
Like
it says it was hand drawn. Does that mean it was primarily hand drawn by one person in this instance, or would you pass
probably
off hand?
two. I
Probably
don't
two.
know. Yeah, probably
Yeah.
two, maybe even four. But yeah,
Okay.
because it's 24 frames. It's just a lot of work, and
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it could have been. So typically, though, that's not. They don't do things over there how like we do them, especially like at Ghibli. The way Miyazaki makes a film is he starts storyboarding. Right? There's no script. Miyazaki doesn't write scripts. He just storyboards the movie. And then as the storyboards are, he goes, these are, when he says they're done, he hands them. They just start animating it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then they work in the dialogue. Like he writes notes, but they work in the dialogue sort of like after kind of thing. Like they finalize that with the actor. And the actors, the acting in Japan, they look at the final animation and then act to it.
Okay.
It's not the way we do it. We do it the complete opposite way. We cut the script and then the animatic, and then like they don't do any of that. The actors do it, and then we animate to the performances. So the upside to that, their process though, is that the animator can become a voice, and you do see this in this piece.
Different rhythm, right? Like in the end.
Like the little Yoda when he's blowing up in size and getting bigger into the camera and coming out. All that stuff's really cool. It's just that if he isn't green, I'm just gonna let you guys. Let me give you some. For the Studio Ghibli crew that's watching our show right now, I know Americans don't respond to black and white line work they just don't like older people. So if you say Yoda and it doesn't have some green in it, they're gonna be like, "Why any green?" I just
got a text from a Miyazaki, and he said, "Don't give a fuck what you Americans want." Oh, that's fair.
I do it, and I totally agree. Like I don't really care what they want either, but I'm just like if you're trying to get people excited. Like the tonal paper would have been great for his coat. Like you don't need anything on it because his coat's brown. Just that's the one thing. Like if I were like, hey, but whatever. So I'll take it, but
yeah. I mean, one thing I wanted to suggest. This is purely speculation on my part, but that really cute little synth tune that Göransson, Ludwig Göransson, is that how you say his name?
Ludwig, super good.
That might be Yoda. That might be Baby Grogu's theme in The Mandalorian. If you just take it out of that synth and you put it with some strings, that could be the melody. True. We might be hearing the actual unveiling of Grogu's theme in this, and so we'll have to listen for it and see if it comes back. And I'm hoping they put the 3-minute track on iTunes and stuff, or Apple Music and Spotify, because I'd listen to that.
He's quickly becoming like, and has been for a bit, like in my favorite, but in just terms of like what he's also accomplished.
Yeah,
like he's up there in my working composers right now. He's in my top 3. Like, to all time, that's a much bigger list, but working top 3 for certain. Yeah. Just because his work on Black Panther is fantastic, his work on Creed is fantastic, his work on The Mandalorian is fantastic, and the music in Boba Fett wasn't bad either. I mean, he didn't do that, but he did the main theme, right?
The main theme was great. The main theme was memorable. Yeah. I mean, I could pretty much hum it right now if I had to.
And his Grogu piece, super good.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cough in the mic. This is cool. A little bit frustrating.
Hold on, Jason, before we do that. Oh,
thanks, man. I just got a very nice DM from you, and I was just actually gonna mention it. Thank you so much. Hope you are both well. Q&A. Monoke style Filoni Miyazaki film. My super chats last week as top podcast network details in your Twitter DMs.
Okay, Jason, now that we're on a podcast, you're going to have to read who it is and not read it fast.
The Star Wars podcast. The Star Wars podcast.
He gives a super chat. You got to do that.
Yes. Oh, I got to say it too. Thank you for the super. Number one, thank you for the super chat. And hope you're both well. Question. A Monoke style Filoni Miyazaki film. And I know what Rob's going to. I think Rob gets a little bit mad when Filoni tries to do the Miyazaki kind of thing, right? Like you don't think he has it down? Is that how you felt about? Isn't that what kind of?
So I want to give two things on this idea.
Tales of the Jedi's Ahsoka episodes started as that, right? We would say.
Sort of. So okay. The question is, what do you think about a Mononoke style Filoni Miyazaki film? So, I would say this: in 1999, I saw The Phantom Menace, and I was conflicted. I like a lot of it. That Lucas was a little rusty. Fine, but I was excited about the future. I was super happy. I was happy. No one would tell you otherwise. Rob loved it. Like, yeah, overall, yeah. Then I saw Princess Mononoke, and I was like, that's what's missing from Star Wars. I want to say Kurosawa influence, but just this mindset of a person, of the Japanese concept of man versus nature. Like there's something that, there's an industrial machine there that's abusing nature, and nature is striking back, and both are doing it in ways that, like Andor, they're using the tools of their enemy in a way to do it. Like nature's using a human to fight the humans, right? But it's also going batshit crazy. And then the humans aren't completely evil. They're helping like lepers, right? They're helping, like they're keeping, it's conflicted. It's conflicting. It's not black and white. And so, the problem is that level of storytelling, that's like 2 levels deeper than anything that gets done out of the Lucasfilm animation department. So what you're more likely to get is a visual aesthetic that mirrors the Ghibli quote unquote style. Although I'll be honest, if they are trying to build a relationship with Studio Ghibli, mimicking that verbatim will piss them off.
Right.
So I would just say that this is excellent opportunity to further push relationships with people with studios that have already done the Star Wars visions, like the Astro Boy one, the Ninth Jedi, the Lop, those sort of the Lop one. I think has a real deeper story, because if you look at the backgrounds, what the backgrounds are showing you, they're showing you what the Empire has done to an ornate, traditional culture and has industrialized it, and very quickly. So like that is the sort of thing. Can Filoni write Princess Mononoke? No. But to be honest, who has? Because Miyazaki didn't technically write it. He storyboarded it. The story's in his head. So you have to bring life experience. And Miyazaki's out there literally cleaning up, riverbeds, and, and he's active in his community. And is Filoni out there like in El Segundo cleaning up the rivers and shit? I think they should probably do a little more community service before they start trying to write those stories. Otherwise, it's going to come across as being very superficial. There's the long answer.
Well, number one, we don't know. Filoni could be the greatest philanthropist of our, I can't even say the word right now, of our time, and we just don't even know. We just don't even know. Or Filoni might be mixing up his recyclables because he doesn't care. Oh, hey, it's Filoni's D.
Oh no, Jason! I'm a philanthropist.
Oh, philanthropist!
I'm a philanthropist. I just like to bring my keyboards. I just start playing them wherever I go for your benefit. Just ba 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 ba.
Pick up the trash. Pick up the trash.
Yeah, it's just like pick up the trash. Pick up the trash. Pick up. I gotta go. Smell Segundo. It's busy. I gotta clean.
It's rude. Yeah, I don't think he inspires anybody when he does that. Max is suggested that we have heard Grogu's theme before, and that was it. So maybe I'm a dummy. Honestly, I won't lie. I haven't watched Mando in quite a while with all of the shows we've had over the last year. Just haven't really had time to.
Are we gonna have to do a rewatch? Are we gonna have to do one of those things?
I'll do it. I ain't scared.
I wasn't.
Wait, you calling me
There
scared?
were no shows for that.
You calling me scared? Because I ain't scared. That's true. We could do that like in between when we hit the next lull.
Well, yeah, as we get the ramp up to season 3, we should do a rewatch since you never did the shows anyway. So
yeah. So and then Arya just drops this in. The executive director of the Resistance show sat down with Filoni and Kathleen Kennedy recently. First Order Clone Wars show from him. I wouldn't necessarily expect anything to be a retread. Like, I don't think they're going to be like, oh, you're the executive director of Resistance. You're our Resistance guy. That's you. You know, so it could be literally anything. I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't think there's anything to glean from there other than they're making more stuff, and of course, they're making more stuff. But hopefully, it's more involved than Resistance. I didn't hate Resistance. It just didn't stick with me very much. You know, of all of the stuff, I think it made the smallest impact. Although I did like some of the characters.
That art style would have benefited a pod racing series, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. It would. I was hoping that show was like I said. I was hoping it was going to be based off of what they were saying and selling. It was going to be Speed Racer, and then we were going to hit a point where all of a sudden it became how these racers become revolutionaries. Like, not exactly an Andor story, but you know, within the confines of an animated show. And it lightly did it, but barely.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever see a French anime called Oban Star Racers?
No.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool little series. I think it's finally gotten a 1080p re-release. It did it on Kickstarter like last year, but it was like a pod racing series. Put out like in the early 2000s. I want to say 2001 or 2ish. You know, so it's got early cell shaded CGI, but you know, so it's a little stiff, but it's pretty good, dude. Like, it's a cool little series, and I'm like, if they could do it, they could do it in 2001 with no budget. Certainly, you can do it now. You know what I mean? Like, just saying. And it had a bigger story. It wasn't just about the racing. It, you know, it kind of branches out. So,
yeah, they are. I think they're gonna have to launch like a big new series pretty soon. Like, not too far away that actually like has some like substance to it, because everything that we've had animation wise lately has been like not like in the main kind of story, but they may have to wait until like the Lindelof stuff gets off the ground and is moving before they could start doing anything sideways. You can't really do sequel trilogy era stuff if Lindelof's team are about to define what that era looks like. Does it look like?
Well, my hope is as Unreal Engine 5 becomes more than just a game engine, it can be used as an animation suite, that the assets they build for games like Fallen Order or whatever future games can then also just be in turn used as the basis for an animated series. You can just pull those assets together. You know what I mean? You don't have to rebuild every time. You can build on to what you have and extend out per stories, you know?
Right.
But you get a lot of like reusability with that stuff.
Right. So, okay. Oh, this is what I was talking about was, all good. Star Wars podcast, the Star Wars podcast, which by the way, I love the balls on that. The Star Wars podcast. I really do. I saw that. I followed you back yesterday, I think, and I saw that and I was like, I love it. All good. Miyazaki could executive produce and Filoni could direct an Indy 5 Spielberg Mangold situation. It would bring Filoni full circle to ATLA. What do you think about that, Rob?
Direct who? To, you know, Japanese animators, because directing on Miyazaki films means he'd need to storyboard the entire film.
Yeah.
So is Filoni going to sit and draw every keyframe for a film for an entire year while he's, you know what I mean, executive producing other things and I don't know. Like, there's a sequence in the Ghibli documentary. I think it's the last one, The Dreams of Madness, the last one that came out. But it's when Goro, his son, is storyboarding on his second animated film, and Miyazaki comes in and basically doesn't trash it, but just says you haven't gone farther enough. It's surface, basically. You know what I said? And so there's this walk of shame, you know, and the whole time he's like drawing and he's happy, you know, and then that shame comes out, but then Goro goes back and figures out what that is, and that's how they made that movie on top of Poppy Hill. It's pretty good. It's a
Okay, so
it's more of a
so it works out in the end. It's not just a
works out
father
in the
abusing
end.
his
No, it
son
works out in the end
in front of a camera.
But then they never get around to Goro doing the CGI thing. It's just Goro. Look, I think Goro would do incredibly well in the American style of animation, where you you lead a crew, you have a vision, you everything gets done, no one's walking out, like. But Miyazaki is not that. He even says, he's like, I put on this smile, but this isn't my face. I put this on because it's what people to see. I'm like, I understand Miyazaki on that level, right? Like, I can't ever understand fully an almost 90-year-old Japanese man who lived through World War II and Vietnam and all that stuff, right? Like, that's beyond my capability. But I do get the idea that there's this melancholy or contradictory nature internally, but you have to like keep that away from people as much as possible, as much as possible.
I don't want to analyze it on my part too much because I'm not an expert in it enough to do so. But is a lot of that like sort of, when I say mundane, I mean it respectfully, where it's just like, here's somebody doing the dishes and being very domestic. Is that like living in the moment stuff? Is that about like appreciating life because of World War II and that kind of stuff? Or
it's not doing the dishes. It's where is your headspace? What relationship do you have to that throughout your childhood? You know what I mean? What did that emotion? It's always coming from an emotional standpoint. As you understand, I'm assuming as a musician, when you make music that's emotional, it's way different than making a pop song. So like, I would agree with you. That's the difference between listening to a Nirvana song and a Stone Temple Pilots song. Stone Temple Pilots is made for being on the radio. It has no meaning. They just wrote fun, like creative lyrics, but they don't have any meaning, right? There's no
Flies in the Vaseline. Oh man, it hit my heart.
Yeah, but I fucking love it, right? I can put that on in the car and have a good time. I can't put Nirvana in the car and have a good time, bro.
Have you heard
the best you're gonna get out of it is a memories of one of the grimmest dark Batman movies ever made, and you're still gonna feel depressed. Like,
there's actually. I want to say this, and then we'll move on from the Nirvana thing. There's two kinds of Kurt Cobain lyrics: really dark and bizarre, or T-shirt slogans that are hilarious. So sometimes the T-shirt slogans that are hilarious,
but that T-shirt slogan hilarious, can also be an emotional rejection of the system.
Oh yeah,
do you understand what I mean?
Never met a wise man. If so, it's a woman. I mean, it sounds like,
but that emotional rejection of the system, is not coming from Stone Temple Pilots ever, right?
No. Although that's Interstate Love Song, it's pretty good. It's pretty good for just pop.
It's their best song. No, it's the one you could put on and everyone, like it gets out before it gets too much. Like it's perfect. Okay. It's their best song.
I'm gonna give them that. That's all I'm ever gonna give them, though.
Right, let's move
on. Thank you again for another super chat, Star Wars podcast.
Wait, Jason, Star Wars podcast is MVP of the day.
I know. Thank you so much. Star Wars podcast says a recent Mobius style cell shaded game called Sable, Sable, is essentially Ray on Jakku the game. Thoughts on Mobius inspired Star Wars game? Love you both. Love you too, man. Thank you. So yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm not a Mobius expert either, but as a kid, I liked stealing heavy metal magazines to look at the boobs, and through that ended up having an appreciation for Mobius. Does that make sense? Well, that's how it happened for me. And
I've been following this game on Twitter for a couple years now.
Okay.
I think it's Gregory or Gregorios. I can't remember his name.
Gregorian Chance. Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So like it's like an open world game that looks like Jean Girard Mobius's art, but it's actually a pretty good game. It's not just that. And that's what I'm saying. Like if you look at it and it has a hand-drawn quality, simple line art, but that it has a strong artistic direction. That's the thing from Star Wars that I would love to see. Unfortunately, when Star Wars is being made only at the AAA level or the mobile level, right? The mobile multiplayer level. So this is where we had a discussion last year about there's a space for single 1A games or AA games, right? where I was like, there should be a super Star Wars like collection that you could put out, like Super Mandalorian game or something that is a game that can be made in 12 months with a studio that's not a giant budget. This sort of thing could also be,
Oh,
made
Rob,
by a
Rob,
responsible studio. So,
16-bit Super Nintendo graphics, Mandalorian game. On the second level, your Grogu, and your special power when you hit B is you could chomp the frogs. The frogs on the
yeah,
ground, you could chomp the frogs. I want to chomp the frogs, Rob.
that's your next hit. Chomp the frogs.
Chomp the
Frogs on the
frogs.
ground. Gonna chomp
Chomp,
the
chomp,
frogs.
chomp, chomp,
Frogs
chomp
on
the
the ground.
frogs.
Chomp the frogs. See?
People are like, these songs are getting stupider by the day. But
Oh yeah, I'm at an Orange Julius and I'm a Force Ghost. I gotta be honest, not a bigger nerd on the Star Wars community on YouTube right now. Really, when you think
and on
about it.
Tuesdays and Fridays, I hang out with Santa Claus, and that's not a joke.
I gotta
Santa.
fucking meet up with the Easter Bunny. We gotta compete. You know what I mean?
Yeah, take him down. But yeah, and I don't know if people know this, but the Mortis stuff in Clone Wars is inspired by Mobius. That was Filoni's first stab at doing Mobius style designs.
So is Miyazaki. Miyazaki's artwork is also heavily inspired by Mobius. So if you look at the way he renders an illustration, you look at Nausicaa, it's 100%. And he's even, a matter of fact, the flying on the pterodactyls or the petrodactyls is her flying on her airship and stuff. Almost a 1-to-1. So
want to hear
heavily influential.
Want to hear a big Mobius regret of mine? So I'm a big fan of Alejandro Jodorowsky. And when Jodorowsky hit that moment where he wasn't making films or couldn't make films, he did work with Mobius. And when I was in San Francisco, I went to the comic book store, and on the podcast I used to have, the guy heard that I liked Alejandro Jodorowsky, and he's like, "Come into the shop." He's like, "Come, we'll hang out for a bit." So I go to the shop, and then he gives me like a really nice like bag of random stuff, and I was living in San Francisco at the time, and it was really hard to park and stuff like that. So I took the BART. And I fucking like a dummy left the bag on the BART, lost it, never even got to fucking read it. It was like the nicest gift ever. And so I still need to get that stuff because I'm super interested in what did Alejandro Jodorowsky and Mobius do together. I mean, that's got to be cool at the very least. So I need to get to that stuff one of these days. But yeah, big regret, big mistake on my part. But so yeah, I love it when they pull Mobius in. I'm even gonna say, I could be wrong, but I sort of feel like the Mandalorian starfighters, they have a different name in the canon now, I think. But the starfighters that we're gonna see in the next season of the show too, I think those are inspired by Mobius. I think that was taking the Mobius design and applying it to Star Wars starfighters even. So I think it's there. I think it's pretty prevalent in a lot of Star Wars stuff that we overlook still. So,
well, I do recommend Sable. It's on Steam right now, so check it out. It's like $25. Totally cool. And I could definitely see a Mando, like if a Mandalore game done like this, 100%.
Oh yeah. So want to hear the other dumb Jason thing of the week?
Sure.
At least I got the podcast out. Like we got a podcast now, and that's out on Spotify and all that jazz. So that's cool. So I did something right. But so I bought this like $200 plugin, okay? And it's like a vocal distortion program. Titanic Sinclair recommended it to me, who I musically respect a lot. I mean, this is a nice guy. I respect him in general. And so I was like, he's like, you got to get this thing. Is this on everything I've ever done that you like? And I was like, oh. So I went and I bought it, and I love it. It's a great plugin, but there's this really weird bug where every now and then when I go back to a track that's like been opened up and closed or left open, it's just there's no sound. Like the copyright infringement stuff takes over. So I uploaded. So I needed to tweak something on like the Perrin song, right? The Perrin track. All you want to do is have a good time. And when I released the song, when it got out, it hit the stores. When I hit play, the tracks were gone because of that bug. and I had to take the whole album down because it won't just let me fix one song or delete a song. So I had to take the whole thing down. So the whole soundtrack to the show will be up probably next week because I messed up. But
you getting your money back, or is that just something you?
No, I pay to have like a record label, and that record label allows me to release, but it takes, when you upload stuff, you still have to wait for it to like process and be delivered to all the stores and stuff like that. So
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
And nobody buys music anymore. Everybody streams. So
that
like,
gives you time to
it.
make Chomp the Frogs, Jason.
Chomp the Frogs.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's your biggest hit of 2023. Right at the end, you're going to slide in there with Chomp the Frogs.
I may just release them all individually because they come out faster that way. I just do them as singles, you know. But whatever. We'll see.
My favorite band working, actually at this point,
yeah,
probably my favorite band of all time. Queen was in that spot, but I think the consistency of Big Rec since 1997, the quality of their work, they've never had a bad album, let alone a bad song for me. Mm-hmm. So like, I think at this point, Big Rec's probably my favorite band of all time. But their album they released last year, they did in 2 parts, I think. Okay. They said to get it out faster, so they did like 7.1, 7.2, which I think that's interesting. I don't know, man. I mean, as a musician, what does that gain you? I don't understand.
I've had the same idea of doing the same thing. Well, it's really expensive to get something mixed and mastered. It's hard to get other players mobilized to do something. But I was thinking about doing that too, and because of Queen 2, if you're familiar with the record Queen 2, there's a white side and a black side. There's White Queen and March of the Black Queen, and they even put about 20-30 seconds worth of silence in between them, and it's supposed to, like, on the CD, which is supposed to like simulate you turning it over as a vinyl record in spirit, and so that's almost like, when you get down to it, like 2 EPs. You know, that's kind of how I look at it. And I honestly don't think it makes sense for bands to do records anymore, because everybody just streams, nobody buys. So you're just, in a way, you're making something to pad out like something that makes something worth $10 or $20, and people don't buy anything. So you might as well not. You might as well just release singles. And but I think that there's an artistic.
I buy their albums.
Of course. and I'm not saying I don't like I don't want some band I love to do like the Pixies to not make records and only make singles. I want them to make records. But does it actually make financial sense? No, but it makes creative sense, I guess.
Or it builds a fan base. You know what I mean? Like, it's like more like investing in people to show up to your shows and everything else.
But I do feel like if you put a single out every month or every couple of weeks, that would have more fan interactions.
This ain't that kind of band, Jason. They really.
Oh, sure. I'm talking about myself or anybody. I mean, well, what I'm trying to say.
They ain't making Chomp the Frogs. Although I fucking wish they would now. Like, that would be amazing.
If you do a record, it's 10 to 12 tracks. So that's basically 1 track a month. And
Sting just reads Irish poetry now. Like, that's how he makes an album. So you could get that out every week, right? Like
yeah. But he also was in the Police and fucks tantrically. So he's better man than me. Unlike me.
Speaking of fucking tantrically, here's Perrin.
This story is going around, kind of annoys me because I have fucking been saying this the whole time. Andor does use some stagecraft after all. If you guys remember the article where I talked about the whole prison arc and what was going on there, we literally dropped it in that Mon Mothma's apartment uses stagecraft. Andor differs from the rest of the Star Wars series, but this is Dark Horizons, and I missed Dark Horizons. I used to read them during the prequels, so I thought it'd be fun to use this version. Yes. Andor differs from the rest of the Star Wars series of the Disney Plus service by eschewing the use of stagecraft in favor of real locations and practical sets rather than CG backdrops. Quote, The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi all rely heavily on the LED screen meets game engine technology to the point it became a bit of a crutch and had an impact on the staging and composition of various scenes in those shows, especially Kenobi. Who said that, though? Who said that? It's like a quote, but whatever. Creator Tony Gilroy originally said the series didn't use stagecraft at all. Which is when I was like, lies, deceit, a while back. But it turns out that's not quite true. Rather, they didn't use the traditional 360-degree stagecraft studio, but did implement the technology in a limited and more practical way combined with sets. Andor VFX producer TJ Falls. That's a great name. TJ Falls.
Pretty
Effects.
good.
Tells
Pretty good.
Slash Film about one key location they used the tech for. Quote, for Andor, we didn't use one of the standing stagecraft sets, but we still use the stagecraft technology. We built a specific LED screen around the embassy where Mon Mothma works. So they're having their party and you've got wonderful screens. And it's like, well, now we've got a wonderful, practically built set. We're immersed with our environment of people. We're utilizing new technology in terms of stagecraft and blending everything together. End quote.
Yeah, they used to just call this rear projection. Like this is back in the day. Rear projection is literally where you would literally.
Is that when I see a butt I like and I try to like see through their pants?
Well, the best use of it, I think the most clever use of it I've ever seen in a film was from the first Superman movie, and it's when they're on Lois's apartment on a rooftop, and there's a scene where Christopher Reeve walks by a tree, like he's leaving, and he walks by a tree, and then you see him take him fly off in one shot. It's one continuous shot. And she's looking at him and like, how'd they do that? And that's because that whole backdrop is a rear projection where they had already put that flying piece together and he just walked off camera and it looked like he flew off.
Right.
It's pretty clever, you know, like, and it holds up. So,
right.
But yeah, they're doing that now with the LED screen. So, and he's talked about that many times. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, on a side note, I have gone into depth listening to all of Tony Gilroy's interviews, becoming a Tony Gilroy expert. And before we get to this, I gotta say, Tony Gilroy, he belongs with us. He's one of us.
I told you.
100% one of us. He's, you know, it's really fucked up. Like he shares these stories about how like he was like a really good guitar player and he started to realize he wasn't like at a certain level, which I hate it when he talks about that though. I thought that was shitty. I wanted to be like, no, Gilroy, it's about you, man. It's about you. But he got like was about to like kind of get like his big break at one point, and then the guy that in the band he was in killed himself, like committed suicide, and he's just like, well, there went that dream. And then later on, he goes and he makes like a really good demo and gets all of this like industry interest. And then they weren't a live band. They hadn't really played live. And when they went to play live, all of the industry people at the showcase are sitting at the same table and just agree that they suck because they played terribly. And it's like, I hate
one day, Jason, we'll take this show to a live comedy stage and we'll fuck it up. Like,
yeah.
3 seconds.
And no, and it like I mean, I'm not the same way, but he has like a father who's like a famous screenwriter type dude, but it has like this like gambling addiction.
Professional gambler.
Professional gambler. So he has this like, he talks about this like dual life that I completely understand, like that kind of thing. Like that's how I feel about like my parents and like my family. Is I'd be living in this fucking crack house one day, and then the next day I'm like living in like a 2-story thing because I got dropped off with a different parent. You know what I mean? It's wild. And
this
not
is the
exactly
Mark
the same,
Maron
but
interview.
The Mark Maron interview is super good on that front. Yeah, where he goes into like a lot of the rock and roll history and he talks about how he doesn't want to be the 50-year-old guy playing music or whatever, and how embarrassing that is. But then he's talking about like how. And I agree, and this is where I feel like him too. Is he likes writing music, and that's what I like doing too. If I could just get my all my friends mobilized, I have like 5 records to put out right now. I'm done. I just need help.
Nobody has done more Star Wars. I wouldn't even call it parody music. It's at this point because it isn't. You're not parodying anything, but it's like music. Satirical Star Wars music. Yeah. Right? And this year, than you, no one.
Right?
No.
I actually, it's pretty funny because it's all done out of frustration for my real music, for my personal music. But I'm like, well, I can't get anything else done on that at the moment. But I got the impulse, and then I start going.
Don't rush Chomp the Frogs.
No, Chomp the Frogs.
You rarely have ever said anything that sparked my attention musically when you just talk about it, right? I'm like, all right, he'll do a song. When you listen, oh, that's great.
Hey,
I'm incapable of imagining what a song could be. As we all have our weaknesses, I always say people have a hard time imagining artwork. I have a hard time imagining music. You know, like it's Yeah, I can't. When you say it's gonna be like this, I'm like, sure, man, just go make it. But chomp the frogs, fuck, bro.
Chomp the frogs. You're like, Rob has a little Cassie on. He's like, chomp, 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 chomp the frogs. Chomp, chomp, chomp.
You know
chomp,
what?
chomp the frogs.
If you had described to me a song called Atomic Dog before I heard of it, I would have wanted to hear that too.
Man, I for a second just now, I thought I really had Chomp the Frogs, but I realized I was singing Kill the Poor by the Dead Kennedys. Kill, 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 kill the poor. But I was doing
the dead Kathleen. No, don't say that. But
the dead Kathleen's. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's better. That's better. We love her. We're not. I want to be very clear on that. We're pro Kathleen Kennedy.
We're a pro Dead Kennedy.
I was making a joke. It's not whatever. You get it.
I don't know if Baymax has this. I haven't got a chance to try to find this, but there's a Willow SEX a Willow Sex magazine. A black on the cover of Black Panther Sex.
You know it's produced. You know a magazine's produced in England or the UK when their logo could look like sex intentionally. Like who curves the back end? It's supposed to say SFX, like right, special X. Mm-hmm. But who adds the humps to the left side of an F? Nobody, right? It's an E. I know a little bit about typography, Jason.
That magazine's hornier than this show. That's what I'll say. But
clever. Well, they outlasted Cinefex.
Man, man,
if it was Cinesex, they would have lasted.
I'm so excited for Willow, though. I really am. Like. Me and my daughter, we were like watching the trailers. It was kind of fun. It was the first. I've never got her to like dissect a trailer before, but on Willow, something about it. She was really into it. We were like watching all three of them. You know, the teaser trailer, and the final trailer.
Well, I'll say this: I'm not a big Willow guy. The trailer was good, surprisingly so, but. If this show does well, maybe we'll get another season of Life is Short. If this season does horribly wrong, we're definitely getting a season 2 of Life is Short, wherein he can mockumentary his way through a Willow-esque series that he fucks up. Like that would be so good.
I think it's going to be good. I just don't know if it's going to build an audience right away. I was thinking about this today. I was like, you know what's kind of interesting about Willow is the moment that it's coming out. I don't know if it's on purpose or if it's just the way it is, the way that things happened. But it's like you have Andor, which, one side caveat here. Everyone's talking about Tales of the Jedi, how much better it did than Andor this week. You guys are reading the numbers wrong again. The numbers from that site are social media interaction. When you put out 6 episodes, 3 of Dooku and Qui-Gon Jinn, and 3 of Ahsoka and her backstory, and it's breaking novels and it's filling in the prequels, you're going to have more people on social media talking about it. I don't know what the numbers truly are, so I'm not trying to make an argument one way or the other, just that the argument you're making is using flawed evidence to be made, and it doesn't I don't know, maybe it did twice as many numbers as Andor, but the numbers you're using do not tell you what you think it means or what you think it says. It's not correct.
But it feeds the YouTube algorithm so flawed evidence feeds the YouTube algorithm, so
hey, I'd rather have our 34 friends here in the chat than 34,000 and be talking out my ass. So I guess
I don't know, Jay. I don't know.
You think we should? Okay.
Can we bend over and talk out our ass for a whole episode?
I'll do it. I'll do it
for 34,000 folks. I don't know.
I'll be like getting these cheeks. I'll be like, turns out Willow's really tall. Lucas deception exposed.
Let's ask about engagement.
Yeah. I did see there was a video that like Willow's already woke or something like that, and I was just like, "Oh, come on, can we not? We have to do it on Willow even." But anyways, we got some Indiana Jones news, and this is a lot of order.
Well, before we do that, we got a couple super chats really quick.
Oh, we do.
Star Wars Podcast is really
Star Wars Podcast. Are you gonna go broke, man? I appreciate the support, dude. But I will just read your things. But thank you so much.
Now you can go to Orange Julius, Jason.
I know. The Star Wars Podcast sends a super chat for $7.99 Australian. Also, Willow must succeed. Without it, Scott Derrickson and Maggie Levin's upcoming Labyrinth sequel will struggle. I need to dance, magic dance, dance, magic dance, dance, magic dance. Yeah, you gotta slap that baby and make it free. I'm with you. I really do want Labyrinth to continue, but there is a thing. There's a thing in all 80s stuff I love that's coming back, even the Ghostbusters that I don't like. And it's that it lacks the music. Like Labyrinth is fundamentally a musical by David Bowie or with David Bowie. And I want more Labyrinth. But if you're gonna do it, you got to get St. Vincent in there, and she has to be Jareth's sister. You got to do something with somebody at the caliber of David Bowie. And it can't just be like, oh, we got Bruno Mars because he's hot, or Childish Gambino, which would be actually I would Childish Gambino. Get Childish Gambino and make him the another person in the
They'll just get that Lin Miranda guy. Jason, you know,
oh,
Hamilton,
fuck him
and
his fucking fake ass version of Hamilton. Learn your history, you fucking dolt. Oh, it's so fucking stupid. If you like Hamilton, just know that it's a fiction. That is not Hamilton is a fucking fascist. He said the worst thing about he hates democracy. Don't believe anything about that. Anyways, and his song in Star Wars kind of sucked too. I'm gonna say it. Blah, 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 blah. That was his thing. Oh, what would they do in Star Wars? Blah, 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 blah. It's like you could have done a lot better, man. Could have done a lot better. Remember the cantina? That little, I don't know, is that calypso music? I don't know what that is, but it jammed. It jammed out, and I needed something to jam out. And why would you get Lin-Manuel Miranda, who does musicals? He doesn't do sweet jams. He does fake history. He turns fascists in history into heroes. Anyways, but thank you again. And and also Star Wars Oral Knots, love them. I can like that's what I was gonna say. Like what's his name? Gilroy was talking about Elvis Costello. He's realized he wasn't at the level. I'm never gonna be at the level of Oral Knots, but it doesn't matter because they do what they do good, and I do what I do.
Right.
So,
but imagine though, Jason, when you're starting out in music, you're going to clubs and you're playing against or with, you know, like you're playing against Elvis Costello. It's not like looking at someone in history. Like that's
no, I understand.
70. Like that's what we're talking about. Like if you were trying to get into music in the 70s and you walk into a bar, you know what I mean? And Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimi Hendrix, you know, are sitting there, and you're like, I played the guitar too. You feel pretty fucking inadequate.
Well, his problem is that he lived pre-punk, and like I get to see Jimi Hendrix and Brian May and Elvis Costello and everybody having put out hundreds of records, or not hundreds, but a bunch of records. And get to see Kurt Cobain come out with fucking 4 chords and be like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if if the inspiration and the passion and all that's there.
I am the Mandalore, right? I fucking love it, dude. It's so good.
It's like, you know, context matters. I mean, look at Teen Spirit and the Godzilla song. It's the same thing pretty much. And more than a feeling. And, but what Kurt brought to Teen Spirit is what changes that up, you know? So I think Gilroy is fairly punk to / post-punk, and he talked about playing with the Cars a lot, so it's probably more new wave than anything. But I want to hear but my big thing is
you should hear his rendition of Jitterbug, dude. It's fantastic.
I want to hear the demo that he made that got showcased, and he said it's out, and he still has it. He still listens to it, and he was kind of being dodgy about it, like he maybe didn't want people looking for it, but I think it's out there. I want to hear.
That's why I was hoping he did that when he did the interview with Edith Bowman on soundtracking. Maybe she would have had a snippet of that, because that would have been the place to put a little bit. Like, here's what I did. It's embarrassing, but why not, right? Because it's a musically driven.
He seemed proud of it. He seemed like he was proud of it too. But he seemed like he was just humble.
Well, then I was just being like, if he wasn't.
Yeah,
but that.
It was very strange to have him on the music show. It was still good, but I was wondering, like, maybe they're going to do 2 episodes. Maybe they're going to get who's the director of the music composer of Endor again?
Patel.
Yeah.
She did she have him on? Someone had him on, because I told you I listened to a whole interview with Nicholas Patel.
Yeah,
it was really good. No, that was the Rogue Ones had him on. So that has to do with not getting the composer or getting the composer. That has to do with who's doing the press junket. the PR people are putting out. So she just reaches out to whatever's available, and that's what's available with the PR people, kind of thing, right? As you know, Jason.
As I know, sometimes know. And then the Star Wars podcast, the other $7.99 super chat says, Ward times is that X? How do you say that?
Ward X Oral Knots Music.
Yes. X Oral Knots Music. Let's go. Choose the name for the topic network thing. Simple, but gets the job done. We also do the Willow podcast. You do a Willow podcast? Oh man, I'm in there on the Willow podcast. I'm going to be listening to that today. I'm not even kidding. I've been sick
you,
all
Warwick
week.
Davis, and his mom are listening to that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
I gotta. It'd be like me having to be on a Willow podcast with you. Would be like me as Matthew Broderick and you're Jim Carrey at medieval times.
He doesn't know. I mean? Guys, he doesn't know he's on a Willow podcast. He really is. He just doesn't know because we call it Making Star Wars Show, but it's gonna really be a Willow bait and switch. So
Jason's gonna talk as if he's in the Willow verse at the same,
I'm like, oh hello, it's a Daikini. Rob the Daikini is here.
Oh, no.
Rob.
Oh no.
I mean, we could make you a brownie. We could make you a little tiny brownie. Come on.
This gets me hungry. Stop talking about food.
You want to know? The only reservation I have about it, which I probably will think if it's funny, it won't matter. But is in the Willow film, the trolls are just like, we're trolls, And then this one, like I think you meet like the troll king in the trailer. It looks like the troll king, and he's like, hey, and he's like telling jokes and stuff. And I'm a little bit like. That's the only kind of reservation I really have about the thing right now, but I'll probably get over it. So and thank you again for the super chats. I appreciate it. I appreciate the support of the show. I appreciate all of you guys liking and subscribing to the show and all that jazz too. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rob. Gotta run, guys, but great to pop in while I could, says Roland. Bye, Roland. Rolling down the river. Okay. So
keep on rolling, rolling, keep on rolling.
So if you want Sex Magazine with Black Panther, Black Sex Panther magazine, Black Sex Panther magazine, Willow's exclusive. Warwick Davis says, yeah, I'm kind of a Sex Panther. So okay, so two things here. This is a little bit of a baby scoop, maybe. And
we're talking Indiana Jones now.
Talking Indiana Jones. And I'm the Insnider said this on his show the other day. Bestman Bulletin wrote it out for me. Thank you, Bestman Bulletin, for the help. Jeff Snyder, the Insnider, who has become an out Snyder, and I'm loving it because he doesn't give a fuck, and I'm all about it.
Yeah, he drops these on a podcast called The Hot Mic. You can get
the Hot Mic.
Pretty good. Hot-MIC, Hot Mic with John Rogan. Pretty good.
Almost called this show The Hot Jason, but then thought couldn't live up to it. This is what
really. But then Max shows up and outdresses us all.
The Hot Max show. Hot Max show. This is okay. So this is what he said on that show. This is what I've heard, and obviously it's early days. They don't even have a writer attached, right? So basically, they're hearing pitches and trying to hire a writer. I think this is about the Indiana Jones TV show, by the way. Back to the quote. I think sometimes when you do that, you meet with writers to hear their takes. That should be their takes. Like what should the show be? And other times you've decided what the show is going to be, and you try and find somebody with a vision to fit that. And that's what I think is the case here. Here's the scoop on Indiana Jones. I've heard the Indiana Jones series is a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark, which follows Marion's father. End quote by Jeff Snyder.
Abner Ravenwood. It was funny because John was bringing up, Abner Ravenwood, and Jeff goes, yeah, okay, whatever that. If it's Abner, great. Like,
no,
because he doesn't follow. So, yeah, Ravenwood's still a cool last name, isn't it?
It is. Now, in my Indiana Jones 5 travels, though, I have a little thing to add to this.
Do you think? I'm gonna let you finish it.
In the Indiana Jones, so this is it from my notes from very recently, and I was like, oh shit. Went back, looked at it, and this tracks with what he just said. This is from my notes. This is a very solid source. Richard Young, who plays Fedora in Last Crusade, was in fact playing Abner Ravenwood, Marion's father, in the current canon at Lucasfilm. and then he has been approached by Disney about replaying the part. This is
So that is supposed to be Abner Ravenwood in the movie?
That is what a source of mine said. As far as they understood, now Fedora had been canonized as Abner Ravenwood in Last Crusade. So I don't know, and then they said that they've talked to him about doing stuff. So I don't know if he would. I kind of doubt he would be playing Abner in the series, but maybe he would. I don't know. I don't know what to make of
that. Is
of
the
any of
only
this.
way you could, if they're saying, if they could get him and they're like, hey, that actually is Abner in that scene, because we never hear his name, right? Never.
Yeah.
So, then that would get the what do you call those? What do you call that word? Contrarians, right? Who are like, I don't want to make it a prequel, blah blah blah. But if it actually featured the actor in The Last Crusade,
yeah,
on some level, like, here's my diaries right before I die, and
yeah.
Also,
with this source, I tried to get about the premise of Indiana Jones 5. They weren't really budging, but I got to be honest with you guys. I don't have anything to go on here. I'm not thinking it's about time travel at the moment. I'm thinking it's something else. I don't know what. I don't know what to say. Yeah, I mean, I'm just like I'm exploring this with the rest of you guys. I'm doing the work, and the work is taking me to. It's not time travel. So
it's Fez travel. It's all the guys that he puts on a Fez. Sala shows up and he puts on the Fez, and you travel through the Fez. It's Doctor Who thing for you, buddy. That's how it works.
You know that Doctor Who's coming into a Disney Plus, really expensive.
Yeah, they're actually paying for some of that too, by the way.
The first one I don't think has the Disney money in it, but it has the original Doctor from the second season of the new reboot on it, and then David Tennant, who I love, and then it's after that going to get really expensive apparently. I'm gonna check it out.
When you were showing us the statistics of female engagement on streaming services, and Peacock was number 1 and Disney's like dead last.
Yeah,
I was saying how the Doctor Who could be an outreach to
makes sense,
the female fan, because Doctor Who crosses over big time.
Right.
My wife literally just rewatches it on a loop.
Yeah,
like the way I watch Rounders. She watches all 17 seasons of Doctor Who, but I watch Rounders on a loop. Like, that's
right. I love me a cute Doctor Who girl. Can't lie. I think you apparently do too. Unless it's like a TARDIS inside. I met one. It was like a TARDIS inside. I'm kidding. I made that up.
Bad joke. Bad
joke. No, it's good. It's good. It's good.
Bad form, Peter.
It's great form. I mean, come on, TARDIS vagina jokes. That's pretty good.
No.
But anyways, so not trying to piggyback on Jeff Snyder's work there. Glad he said it. I wouldn't have known it was significant if he hadn't said it. That's just the truth. Is I had that in my notes, and I was like, okay. So I figured like maybe there might be a novel or something, and maybe it might be coming in a novel. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know, but if what Snyder's saying is true, I think that's another breadcrumb to where they're at. And when they said that they had approached him about doing something, I assumed maybe it was just to be an Indiana Jones 5 in the background, or to be like a double. I knew he wasn't the primary double, but maybe it would be cute if he was like a double on a shot and they could do a little thing. I didn't know if it was cute or if it was something significant. It may be something significant though. It may be. I don't know. I don't know what to make.
They're going to reskin the Indy right at Disney and put Abner's face on that non-Harrison Ford looking Indiana Jones. Can they just buy his likeness to Indiana Jones now so they can fix that animatronic Indiana Jones? That's my second favorite ride at Disneyland, but it doesn't have Harrison Ford's face. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
He looks more like Abner Ravenwood or Fedora than he does Harrison Ford. So it has that weird 90s Lucasfilm, everything's sort of like an AI re-rendering of Kevin Costner. They kept doing that.
Yeah.
Weird thing.
Well, I mean, it does make sense that he would be Abner. I mean, I've heard the theory of it before, and people questioning it before. Is that Abner? It should be, but it wasn't. It was just a character called Fedora that was just like the archetype for Indy that he looks up to. But now it appears that if the idea is that will become Abner Ravenwood, or that is Abner Ravenwood, and that's his first interaction with Indiana Jones, and
Well, we were discussing off air some indie stuff we can't talk about, but I was like, I'm gonna go back and reread that Rinsler Indiana Jones book I got and see if I can glean anything from the production of The Last Crusade, right? And the only thing I can glean was they had a lot of weird fucking ideas for that movie before it became the movie we knew. This is all this Monkey King stuff with, or like there was a ghost in a castle that Indiana Jones was chasing.
Yeah, I lost. Yeah. That was by, I think that was the Chris Columbus one, the ghost one. I want to say
this is before that. Columbus was brought on. There was they kept redoing it, so there was like 3 people before it became the Monkey King.
Well, but that's why we end up the haunted castle stuff is why we end up with the castle even in the movie in the first place. You can tell it's just like that. It was that weird Spielberg Lucas thing. Well, there's going to be a castle. Okay, we could budget that. They start budgeting the castle. Now castles, it's like fucking Gremlins too. Castle's in the movie. Does it need to be? Nope. But castle's in the movie.
The best piece of info I got on that was that Sean Connery was one who suggested that he also slept with
really
Elsa. Yeah. He wanted a situation where he did everything his son did, but better. So I must have also done her better. Like that was literally they found a tasteful way to make that work, but it is hilarious. Like
tasteful, I don't know if I would go that far. Definitely very fucking weird. Like
it made my girlfriend's conservative father laugh. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and this is like old school conservatives where they weren't laughing at that shit now, right? So.
You know why that works, why it's okay. Because it's the dad fucking the same girl as the kid. He's fucking the hot girl. So the dad's like, I want to fuck Elsa. So then therefore it's okay.
I get you.
If you flipped it, if young Indy, if you flipped it, then it becomes worse. So anyways, it's strange fucking thing. I mean, we got George Lucas saying it's more interesting if Marion's 11 or something. Like when they meet. We got Indiana Jones fucking, and his dad fucking the same girl. We got Luke Skywalker Frenching his sister Frenching her brother. It's wild. It's a different time.
There was a whole version of The Last Crusade where a student of his, all these girls are trying to fuck Indiana Jones, right? Mm-hmm. Or like they're breaking up with him because he's sleeping with all of his students, and one of them sneaks like in his luggage or something and comes along the adventure, and then she ends up hooking up with the female like there's another like adventurer they meet up, and she ends up leaving Indy to go adventure with that lady. Then there's a whole other one where he gets married to like 2 different people, bro. Like, and they put the treatments in there so you can read, this stuff.
They wouldn't. That can't be. They wouldn't have done lesbian stuff.
They didn't. They didn't outright say that. But you know what I mean. Like that's like, no, I'm gonna go learn to be an archaeologist from this person. But her whole thing is to be with Indy, and then to be with someone else. It's like that implied thing, right?
Right.
Like, they could never do that outright in the 80s. But
I feel like there was a rumor. I don't feel like it. There was a rumor. I don't know if it was true, but there was a rumor that at one point they were playing with Natalie Portman being Indiana Jones's daughter and going that way. And then there was a rumor, I think it was on Equal News. And it was like, the rumor was that there were 2 versions. One was, it was his daughter. Another one, it was his assistant, or not his assistant, a student who stowed away on the adventure and was really into him. And he had to be like, look, doll, you're a kid, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That the stowing thing might've been from Crystal Skull, because I kind of read those. I was like, what are they doing? I may have read those back to back. I'm not good with the deets like you are. But the daughter thing definitely came out in that conversation, not the Portman casting. Yeah. In that Lucas wanted to do Indiana Jones's daughter. That didn't sound right. You know what I mean? He wanted to put her in the script. And Steven didn't want to do that because he had done the daughter thing in The Lost World. Right. It's so weird with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull because I get like nerd angry reading it when Lucas wants to put an alien invasion kind of thing in there, or wants to do something more with saucers, and Steven goes, I don't want to do saucers, I've already done that, and Independence Day had just come out, and I'm like, but then you go do War of the Worlds. Like Steven then goes and does War of the Worlds, and it's like, had they just made a War of the Worlds 50s remake with Indiana Jones and the War of the Worlds, that film would have been Jason. Think how big Kingdom. If that film if it had been Indiana Jones and it come out in 2003 or 4, right in between episodes 2 and 3, you know, Indiana Jones and the War of the Worlds, dude, like that shit would have been fucking epic. And it could have taken us out of a timeline that was adhering super strongly to real world events.
Yeah.
Because we're at a point now where it's like, well, how do you take Indiana Jones into the present? And you're like, oh, the Cold War. I'm like, no, you need the aliens attacking in the 50s so you can have a much more fun and adventurous future to have crazy Nazis come back in the 70s with alien technology or some bullshit like that. You know what I mean? Like, it needs more.
I feel like if they were going to lean into the tropes of the day with communism, anti-communism, I think that they should have went less War of the Worlds and more Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because that was the true Manchurian Candidate kind of stuff. I think that
sure, and it could have tied into, because Ford in that interview was saying he wanted Indiana Jones to be tracking down Nazi survivors, like in Argentina and stuff. And Invasion of the Body Snatchers, right? What if they weren't Nazis? What if they were aliens and they were also, you know what I mean? Like there's a way to put that sort of paranoia thing.
And they could have called it Indiana Jones and the Snatch. No.
I like it.
Yeah, like another person who I know who worked on.
No, Guy Ritchie sues him. Hold on, Guy Ritchie sues him because of Snatch.
Somebody I know who worked on Indy was telling me they were. I don't know if it was Ford was in on it, but they were really cognizant to not make him so grumpy and old. Like in this new Indiana Jones, they're like he doesn't seem so grouchy and like how he seems tired in Indiana Jones 4. He doesn't seem tired in this one. They were, a little bit. I mean that was on purpose though. It just wasn't smart direction. You know what I mean? Because you feel the movie's tired. But I
just want to end the Indy chat. I just want to. It just frustrates me that Steven didn't want to do anything to do with science fiction and spaceships, because he had done science fiction and spaceships and Independence Day, but then he makes War of the Worlds. That's the contradictory part of like Steven Spielberg. And if you ever read a book, hold on.
Yeah.
There's the book, They Would Be Kings, the DreamWorks story. And it's about, it's actually sort of a sequel to a book called Disney War, which I also recommend. It's when Eisner and Katzenberg took over Disney. And then it ends with Katzenberg leaving, right? And the They Would Be Kings is when Katzenberg forms, the DreamWorks with Spielberg and Giffen. And the writer of Disney War did the foreword, so they very tie in. I highly recommend those audiobooks if you just want to listen to it. Reads incredibly well. But you get a real good sense when they were building DreamWorks, this idea was going to be this giant $200 million to $500 million studio. They created a fake lake, to put the studio in, and then Steven, he just will never commit to anything because he doesn't want to burn a bridge, or like he doesn't like to spend his own money, and he doesn't like to commit to any one thing. So they're over here building all this stuff up.
Sounds like a good date.
Investors, getting ready to launch a brand new movie studio, which hadn't been done in the longest time. And then he goes and makes his first film. He goes and makes Saving Private Ryan with some other studio. You know what I mean? Like he makes it with, was it Paramount? Like Universal? One of those fucking things. Paramount probably. And then like that should have been DreamWorks. So DreamWorks' first movie ends up being The Peacemaker, which, like, is this a big limp? Like this is especially in the 90s, like you needed to come out firing with the big win. It's called The Dream Team, right? Steven Spielberg and Jeffrey Katzenberg, the head of animation, the head of Hollywood, and the head of music are all teaming up to put this big, $1 billion studio together. And their first movie is a George Clooney film, not directed by Steven Spielberg, got nothing, and then Prince of Egypt. I'm not a religious dude. That's an excellent piece of work. The animation, the storytelling, you get to see God kill a bunch of kids. It's fun, dude. I love it. And so like we keep it real. I like
real fire and brimstone stuff.
Shit, yeah, motherfucker. Beautiful animation. Beautiful, wonderful score.
Back before God became a woke candy ass god, back when he would really send plagues down and really burn some shit.
But that kind of goes under the radar, and you don't really get a sense of any DreamWorks animation until Shrek, which is a spoof of Disney. right? Like, so it's just one of those things with Steven. Like, you just can't. When people are like, "Oh, Steven Spielberg going to do a Superman movie, he's going to do this, he's going to do that," why wouldn't he do a Star Wars? You can't get Steven Spielberg. When JJ doesn't like. When J.J. Abrams gets $500 million and doesn't do anything, I'm like, that's the most Spielberg move he's made yet.
Well,
like everyone says he's the next Spielberg. Well, that is literally a Steven Spielberg move. Like,
there's only one Shrek as far as I'm concerned, and that's Max Shrek. All right.
From Nosferatu or from Batman Returns?
Batman Returns.
Because it's also the name.
Yeah, but Batman Returns.
But also, if you like Batman Returns, or if you don't like Batman Returns,
I love it.
Go listen to the Daniel Waters interview at Superhero Stuff You Should Know. He's fantastic. Okay. Jason, he's your kind of guy. Daniel Waters, 100%.
All right, I will. And then Star Wars Podcast, another super chat, and said the nicest thing of all time. Now, he's nicer than any of you guys. All of you guys are mean to me, but he's a sweet, sweet man. I super chat a lot because, frankly, you genuinely deserve it. Working as hard as you do despite constant theft. Hope it brings some balance to the force. It does. And it makes it an easier pill to swallow. Feeling appreciated. I feel like a woman right now. Like a real woman. Not like just some, little slag that people just continually says has a TARDIS vagina. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You feel more like a Sice Noodles and less like a Yasm.
I feel like every woman right now. I feel like Whitney Houston. And he's by Bobby Brown.
It's been in my head the minute you started talking. I started hearing the song, and then when you went there, I'm like, motherfucker! I knew where you, because I started hearing it as you were talking. You bastard!
The podcast says a $2.99 super chat says the Indy podcast stoked for Indy 5 RPG in 2024. You think there's going to be
That's the BioWare game. BioWare, one of those studios, was supposed to be making an Indiana Jones game for the longest time.
Yeah.
But no one's seen or heard from it. So for good thing, I don't think people should be looking at games way early in advance. Cyberpunk. But
yeah. I love Cyberpunk. I actually love Cyberpunk too. Like I want to play it again. I want to now that it's been polished a bit more, I want to play it again. But yeah, man, if only they could have just waited a little bit longer on that one. But yeah, and I'm with you, because like, what are they going to say? Like, oh, it's not done and it has problems, because every unfinished game has problems. So it's kind of a grift to report on that kind of stuff, unless there's like real big problems, like the game isn't even started being made yet. Like I heard some stuff about the Old Republic game, like it's pretty much been prototyped, and it's kind of where they're at. And it's just like, oh Jesus, that sounds bad.
Yeah, but we knew that when we did the conversations about that game, because the studio that is producing it is sort of an overseer. They oversee. They're like a middleman's not a good word for it, like a managing firm, right? That gets together different studios and sort of coordinates
contracts it all out.
It's not. Yeah, it's a generally those things are done for remakes, because you're going to split a giant game up amongst 3 or 4 different studios. But this seems less a remake and more of a reimagining. So
yeah,
I just wonder if the core concept of that project is flawed based at where it's at. Like, it's easier if you're going to do a reimagining from the ground up, utilizing content or story from the original. You need less of a what's the Blue studio that did the Demon Souls remake, and more of like Bethesda, right? Someone that could. So the thing I would say about Bethesda games is always remember those seem to live or die on fan mods,
Mm-hmm.
So like they can be glitchy. They're so complex, their systems. People kind of shit on them for that, but those are really complex game engines. So I would say if it doesn't have a PC release, that'll be unfortunate, because I think that Bethesda games do way better on the PC side in terms of quality of life content than.
And I'm a console player, so I'll never get to mod the games.
Yeah, but you'll be able to watch the YouTube videos, right? So
yeah,
well,
with
consoles can do mods. You can do mods. It's just they tend to not provide the support, because what you need is a way to get the mod onto the console, which means you need a store that puts that, and a lot of fan content generally is like IP infringing things. You know what I mean? Like it's very difficult. So they could put one of those things where, it's on there. If you could figure out how to get the content on your system, then you could play it. They could do that, and that has happened before. So
yeah. All right. Well, I think we did it all. We made up for yesterday. My voice is a lot better. than it was yesterday. Yesterday, I had no voice. Today, I do. So that's good. But I'm going to go cough my brains out after the show because I've been holding it back. I have to do it. But make sure if you can't watch the show every day, by all means, please subscribe to us on a podcast format and subscribe to the channels to the show there. It's called the Making Star Wars Show. And like it and leave a positive review. I imagine my detractors will try to review bomb me negatively like they used to. I imagine that will come back, but that's the way it is. And so positive reviews on the subscriptions on the podcast stuff would be appreciated. Yeah, and you could send emails to MakingStarWars@gmail.com if you listen to the podcast and you have something that you want read on the show or something to say on the show, and that is a good way to get through to me. So, and our last super chat of the day, which I really super appreciate, again from the Star Wars podcast. All good, Jason. This specifically for Rob. Your clarity, Star Wars current levels of artistic integrity give me hope for humanity. Great art too.
I appreciate that, but to be fair, you haven't heard me hate something you love yet. So
that's true.
Maybe the Star Wars podcast wants to go back and listen to some of those Book of Boba Fett's and Kenobis.
It's true. That is the thing about you. But no, I wouldn't have it any other way. We're not here to cheerlead Lucasfilm. We're here to hopefully enjoy it. And if we don't, we'll be honest. But boy, am I loving Andor. Andor's maybe my favorite non-Star Wars film thing of all time. Probably is. Easily.
Yeah.
Actually, it is.
Yeah.
That's my favorite non-film thing.
Come on. It has the kid raging against the machine in the first episode. How could you not? And how could it not be up there for you?
Rule Farm Boy already gave my review, my rate and review it. He already did it. He did it already. Good job, dude. I appreciate that. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back on Monday morning. Disney shillin', as Jedi Mike says. And Jedi Mike, you got to come hang out with us too. And also the Star Wars podcast. We should definitely have you on. We should all hang out. I hung out with Jedi Mike, and he is a fun guy. He's a fun guy. He's very smart.
Also, folks, if you don't forget, if you don't want to leave a review for us, then please go find your favorite podcast, and in their reviews, review us positively in their reviews. Hack the reviews. Go find the most popular podcasts on Apple or Spotify or whatever, and give us a review in their reviews. That's the best way to spread the news.
Otherwise,
Sabri Canary.
Okay.
All right. I forgot I had that. I had to use it. Oh, I also forgot I had this. Hi, everybody. Bye, Rob. Thank you for the super chats today, Star Wars podcast. I really appreciate it. And we'll see everybody Monday morning at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and on the podcast stuff.
Sound like Quentin.
It's the end of the show.
Come on, let's go. Hey!
It's the end of the show.
Come on, let's go. Hey!
It's the end of the show.
Come on, let's go. Hey!
You know you should go.
Come on, let's go. It's not about spaceships.